It was just before dawn on November 10, 2025, when the skies above northern Luzon, Philippines turned a deep, unnatural gray. Fishermen who had ventured out before sunrise rushed back to shore as the sea began to heave with monstrous force. Moments later, Typhoon Fung-Wong, a storm packing winds of over 120 miles per hour, made landfall, unleashing its full fury on the island. Within minutes, rooftops were torn away, power lines snapped, and torrential rain flooded entire neighborhoods. In cities like Tuguegarao, Lawag, and Santiago, the sound of wind and shattering glass drowned out every other noise. Emergency sirens blared through the darkness, warning millions to seek higher ground. The Philippines, a nation all too familiar with nature's wrath, was once again caught in a battle against one of the Pacific's most violent forces. This is the story of Typhoon Fung-Wong, the storm that shattered Luzon and tested the limits of human endurance.
Ayan, no? So, ibig mo sabihin, saan galing yung mga...
At 4:30 a.m., Typhoon Fung-Wong roared ashore in the northern provinces of Cagayan and Isabela, its eye carving a path of destruction through rice fields and coastal towns. The Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, PAGASA, recorded sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, with gusts reaching 150 miles per hour, powerful enough to rip entire rooftops off concrete houses. The coastline disappeared beneath walls of seawater as storm surges rose up to 15 feet, swallowing fishing villages along Apari and Santa Ana. In Tuguegarao City, streets vanished under knee-deep water within minutes while transformers exploded in bursts of blue light, plunging the city into darkness. By sunrise, power was out across much of northern Luzon. Major highways were blocked by fallen trees and landslides isolating dozens of towns. In the lowlands, farmers watched helplessly as floodwaters devoured fields of ripening rice, their livelihoods gone in hours. The Philippine Coast Guard had already grounded all vessels, and hundreds of flights were canceled across the country. Over 800,000 people were forced into evacuation centers, clutching bags of clothes, documents, and photos, their lives condensed into a few plastic sacks. Fung-Wong had arrived, and Luzon was now at the mercy of the storm.
Oh my God!
As the full force of Typhoon Fung-Wong swept inland, the night turned into a blur of chaos and noise. Wind howled like a freight train tearing through every street, while sheets of rain pounded the ground so fiercely that visibility dropped to almost zero. In Cagayan Valley, roofs were ripped from homes and hurled across neighborhoods. Concrete walls crumbled under relentless gusts. Residents huddled in the dark, listening as trees snapped and metal sheets clanged against their walls. In Ilocos Norte, families sought refuge in churches and schools that soon overflowed with evacuees. Some watched in horror as floodwaters surged into their homes, rising from ankle to waist, deep in minutes. Emergency crews struggled to move through submerged roads, battling both wind and debris. Downed power lines sparked fires in several towns, forcing firefighters to respond in near-impossible conditions. In Santiago City, eyewitnesses described an endless roar, the kind of sound that made even seasoned storm survivors tremble. Communication lines were down. Radios were the only connection left to the outside world. By midday, Luzon had become unrecognizable, a storm-battered island where entire communities were cut off, isolated, and waiting for daylight to reveal the true scale of Fung-Wong's wrath. When Typhoon Fung-Wong's eye passed over northern Luzon, the brief calm was surreal. For 20 minutes the wind stopped and survivors stepped outside to assess the damage only to face the second wall of the storm moments later. The quiet shattered into screams and splintering wood as the back half of Fung-Wong slammed in with even greater fury. In Tuguegarao, rescue teams fought to reach families trapped in flooded homes navigating waist-deep water with rubber boats. Across Isabela, power poles lay twisted like wire, while whole blocks of houses collapsed under pressure from the storm's 140 mph gusts. Roads vanished under torrents of mud and debris, cutting off emergency responders from the hardest-hit villages. At the Magat Dam, authorities raced to release water to prevent an overflow that could have wiped out downstream communities. In Lawag, emergency sirens wailed non-stop as residents were ordered to move uphill amid fears of landslides. Inside evacuation centers, families clung to one another as the roof panels rattled and rain poured through cracks in the ceiling. "We thought it was the end," said one mother from Cagayan, her voice trembling as she described holding her child beneath a soaked blanket. For millions that night felt endless a battle, not just against wind and water, but against fear itself.
Aabutin mo na! Aabutin mo na!
When daylight finally broke over northern Luzon, the devastation of Typhoon Fung-Wong came into view, and with it the heartbreaking human cost. At least 96 people were confirmed dead, and dozens more remained missing. Many of the victims drowned in sudden flash floods or were crushed beneath fallen trees and collapsing walls. In Cagayan Province, rescue workers found an entire family of 5 who had been trapped overnight when their home gave way to rising water. In Isabela, a 9-year-old boy was pulled from the debris of what had once been his classroom. He had gone to help his father secure the roof before the storm intensified. Hospitals overflowed with the injured. Doctors worked under flickering emergency lights, treating wounds caused by flying debris and collapsing structures. Blood donations poured in as volunteers lined up outside makeshift triage tents. Across the floodplains, survivors wandered through knee-deep mud, searching for loved ones or the remnants of their homes. Farmers wept beside drowned fields, their crops and their year's income completely lost. For many, it wasn't just property that was destroyed, it was a sense of safety and stability. The faces of survivors told the story, best shock exhaustion, and the quiet determination to start again after one of the most violent storms to strike Luzon in years.
Ito natin yung pinakamalakas na bagyo. Oh! 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 Yolanda.
As the full scale of Typhoon Fung-Wong's destruction became clear, the Philippines launched one of its largest emergency operations of the year. More than 25,000 soldiers, police officers, and firefighters were deployed across Luzon to assist in rescues, distribute food, and clear debris. Helicopters hovered above flood zones, dropping supplies to towns that had been completely isolated since landfall. In Tuguegarao and Lawag, soldiers used amphibious vehicles to reach stranded residents while volunteer divers searched for missing persons along swollen rivers. Convoys of trucks carried bottled water, rice, and medicine into evacuation zones, often through roads that were barely passable. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, NDRRMC, activated 24-hour command centers coordinating with local mayors and international partners. The U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and Red Cross joined the effort, sending emergency kits, solar lights, and satellite communication equipment. Yet, despite the swift mobilization, challenges mounted. Landslides continued to block highways while fuel shortages slowed aid deliveries. Power outages left millions in darkness for days. Still, the response revealed something powerful: the resilience of the Filipino spirit. Neighbors shared what little they had. communities organized rescue efforts on their own. Amid the wreckage, hope flickered like the first lights coming back on across the battered island.
This might be a big one. Yeah, here it is. That's a big one.
Yan na sa dagat. Dali na sa motor. Yan na sa dagat.
In the aftermath of Typhoon Fung-Wong, reflection set in, not just on what was lost, but on what must change. Scientists from the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, PAGASA, confirmed that the storm's intensity was amplified by abnormally warm Pacific waters temperatures nearly 2 degrees Celsius, higher than the November average. This, they warned, is the new face of climate change. For years, researchers have cautioned that tropical cyclones in the western Pacific are becoming stronger, slower, and wetter. Fung-Wong was no exception. It dumped over 24 inches of rain in less than 2 days, turning towns into temporary seas. The storm's path also exposed how quickly infrastructure and emergency systems can be overwhelmed in rural provinces. Experts called for long-term investments in flood barriers, stronger building codes, and expanded early warning networks. This can't just be about recovery, said a climate policy expert from Manila. It has to be about redesigning how we live with storms. Yet, in every story of tragedy, there were moments of courage, a father shielding his children from debris, volunteers risking their lives to deliver food, doctors performing surgeries by flashlight. These moments serve as reminders that while nature's power grows, so too can humanity's determination to adapt and endure. As the sun rose over northern Luzon, the clouds of Typhoon Fung-Wong finally began to break apart, revealing a landscape scarred yet still standing. From the ruined coastlines of Cagayan to the battered farmlands of Isabela, life slowly returned, families clearing mud from homes, children wading through puddles to recover their school books, and power crews working tirelessly to bring light back to the darkened cities. But in the silence that followed the storm's fury came a deeper realization: this was not just another typhoon. It was a warning, a signal that the balance between humanity and the planet is shifting, and the storms of tomorrow may strike even harder and faster than we can prepare for. Still, amid the wreckage, the Filipino spirit endures, undaunted, united, unbroken. From the Pacific to the Gulf, from Luzon to Louisiana, one truth echoes: we all share the same storm. The question is, will we learn before the next one forms beyond the horizon? If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, not just to remember the storm that passed, but to stand together before the next one arrives.